And joining me on the podcast and on video is John Meyer, mining analyst and partner at SP Angel. You're right, John.
Yeah, I'm good. Good.
I'm glad you're good. It's a miserable market, isn't it? Really dreadful. I feel like this, Labour growth government are pretty much anti-growth. It's just the shadow of the budget looms large over the entire market, especially the smaller market, the AIM market. And just looking at it now, I think sentiment is down, which maybe is not a bad thing, but there's worry about the unknown. But there's more things leaking out about the budget. But I do think, as far as investors are concerned, they are looking at inheritance tax because, of course, the lowest hanging fruit, they were boxed into a corner and they said, we're not going to raise taxes on income tax, national insurance, and VAT. We're not going to do that. So they're scrabbling around for pennies here and there, trying to find where they're going. And so they have started raising money on national insurance, but they say, but not on working people. Working people. Are you working people? I thought, hang on a sec. If you're a small business owner and you've got 7, 10 employees, you are working. You are a worker. You're probably the hardest worker there, and yet they'll have to shoulder the costs on top of the national living wage, which has gone up by 30% in the last 3 years. I think that's not pro-growth. It's inflationary, and it's raising the cost of business. It's anti-growth and inflationary. I don't know. And of course, it's inheritance tax, business relief on AIM, I think will be scrapped now. I think they'll remove it. And while it may not hit certain shares, I think the overall sentiment, we've got a lot of funds who own IHT vehicles in AIM. And I think, the sell-off here, they're very much 6 billion invested in AIM through IHT. And so I think that will have a negative effect. Hopefully, though, it's not as bad as we all think. I don't know. It's just they're annoying me, John, Labour. They came in with a bit of a promise.
Well, it may be that Labour regret having ever won the election, but I also think they've put out a lot of negative press, and I'm hopeful that actually the budget won't be quite as bad as many people fear.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah,
and I think they recognise that if we had a few strong growth companies, like Apple and Google, that kind of thing, that actually the UK economy would do an awful lot better. And let's face it, AIM is where these companies are supposed to start. That's where these things are supposed to get financed. Look at ASOS, for example, stellar performer.
Well, don't look at it now, but look at it previously. It's tanked and boo. No, I agree with the thing is that's they've got to stimulate that market. That's it, where growth comes from. It's called the growth market, but yet by removing sort of business relief, or you've got to stimulate. Like I said, in America, they take a bit more risk. They understand that there are companies that will fail, but for that one out of maybe 10 they invest in that goes on to be a mega company, it's worth it, more than worth it, And so in this country, they're a bit more risk averse, and I think you've got to really stimulate entrepreneurship, and that's why the American economy is doing still well. Some of their big companies are starting, a lot smaller, are going gangbusters, and so every other stock market in the world pretty much suffering. Every economy is suffering from Europe to China, apart from America, and that's because they're not scared of taking risks. They stimulate the business. There's funds there, there's capital for it, and their capital markets are thriving.
Well, look, I've got to say it's worked for me. I put cash into lots of small growth companies, and I'm guessing 1 in 10, 1 in 20 of those, gives a very strong return. And I mean, I'm not just talking about getting your money back, but actually stuff that is 2 times, 5 times, 100 times returns. And it's not going to work like that for everybody, I'm sure, but I'm not sure that okay, we have specialist knowledge in the mining space, but people, if you've got a bit of specialist knowledge in a particular area, and you can see certain companies are growing, they're the businesses to invest in.
Yeah. I tell you what's doing well, John, and I'll share the chart with you. I mean, you know this as well as me, but I've shared this chart many a time in the last few weeks on social media. Look at gold there. Look at that. That's gold futures, $2,723 an ounce. That's done very well, isn't it? Are you investing in any gold miners, John?
I'm not. I mean, I much prefer to go for copper and tin and things, those sorts of metals. Nothing wrong with gold. It's a good market. It's a market that goes up when the central banks are buying, when the dollar is falling. And when investors are concerned, it's something that works very well when there's change in the world, because money gets moved around. And let's say you're selling out of the dollar and you're not quite sure what market you want to put those funds into, then you park the cash into gold for a bit, because gold is always seen as a pretty safe investment. It doesn't give you much of a return. In fact, there always used to be an interest rate on gold. I don't think there's much of that these days. But it's such a big liquid market that it's very easy to trade, particularly for the hedge funds that are moving cash around.
Yeah. Well, look at that. Since the start of 2024, gold is up. I can't see it on the screen there. Gold is up. I can't see it. 33%. That's a good return, isn't it?
And I think,
yeah,
some of that reflects that there's a bunch of countries out there who would like to break the dominance of the US dollar
yeah,
trading perspective. So more than half the world's trade is done in US dollars. These countries would like, we're talking China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, I suspect, and a few more, love to break the dominance of the US dollar. They don't, because the Americans, the fact that the dollar is so widely traded means the Americans can borrow trillions and trillions and use that to fund their economy and their military machine and all of that. So they love to break that dominance. And of course, if they do, well, the more they erode the value of the dollar, the more gold prices will go up, the more other commodities will go up, because what happens is commodities that are effectively traded across the world in a whole lot of different currencies will gain more value relative to the US dollar. And that means that the price relatively goes up for everybody else. That's certainly good for our sector.
yeah. China, right? I mean, they've had news out today, but so where is it? The new, what day are we? Friday. Wait, John. Let's scroll down here. Let's expand this so you can see it. There we are.
Justin, it's Friday, all day.
Yeah, apparently again. So Friday. Let's scroll down to Friday, and these are the GDP figures for China. So year on year to Q3. For Q3, this is 4.6 that came in. That was nice growth, but it was forecasted that, but it's down from 4.7. Now the target is 5%, so they're missing that. And quarter on quarter today, it's gone down to 0.9%. The target was 1 and previously 7, so up on that. But if you scroll back up here, we're at the start of the week, the miss on these exports, there's CPI there, month on month, zero inflation, pretty much. PPI is minus 2.8. But exports and imports, this here, look at this. Forecast to come in exports year on year to December, 6%, came in 2.4. Imports even worse. Forecast come in at 0.9%, they came in at 0.3. And that's down from 8.7% exports to 2.4, and down from 0.5 to 0.3. So that's a little bit worrying. Now, if that carries on, that GDP isn't going north, it's going south. So that's the big worry, isn't it? Now,
if we think
the stimulus thing is not convincing investors, is it? The stimulus.
If we think back to a year ago, export levels were very high. It's very hard to maintain that kind of level of growth. 2.4% still a good number. I mean, okay, it's not the crazy 6%, but the Chinese economy is still growing at a rate that the rest of the world would be very envious of. I mean, the only other major economy that is close to that is India, which is also growing at a great pace, and Brazil, that was growing at a great pace, that I think has slowed off a bit. So, if the US was to grow at the same rate as China, we would be popping the champagne and having a great time.
Yeah, but the worry is that growth is slowing, isn't it? And it's below their target. And so how with this size of economy like China, it is like the old, cliched sort of super boat, what they call the super tanker, trying to turn that around. When does that growth become no growth? It'll take a long time, but can they stimulate enough? I mean, the stimulation package so far, stimulus package hasn't inspired investors. I mean, the markets have popped, but they're now dropping, aren't they?
Well, there's no doubt they've got huge problems in the property market that they have to resolve. They have announced this $853 billion debt swap, but we don't really know where the cash is going, what the cash is being used for. it's effectively a refinancing of local government, and I think then the local authorities will be able to use portions of that cash to fund new projects. So look, we've got to wait and see. They've been making lots and lots of statements. Everybody's disappointed that they haven't announced some sort of 50 billion or 500 billion stimulus bazooka. But it's going to come. It's just it might not come in a single pronouncement. It might be lots and lots of little bits of strategy, little tweaks here and there. But it will work because these guys are actually very effective at turning things around.
Yeah, they've also got that property debt problem, but I suppose it's up to them, that debt. Look at that, it's gone up 41%, right, since this is the CSI 300. 41% since the 18th of September, and down 12% since the peak, which was at the 8th of October. That's an indices of the 300 biggest companies. That's quite volatile, isn't it? That's unbelievable.
Surely is. Surely is. Look, the world is growing. That's, and don't forget, we've got this enormous drive for electrification. We are moving very fast into a world where we get a lot more power from solar and wind, and electric vehicles are still, they might not be selling as quite as fast as some companies had hoped, but they are still selling pretty quick. I still think that, and the technology is improving really fast. Now, it'll take a while for some of the new battery chemistries to roll out, because you don't want to be buying something that hasn't been properly tried and tested. But it's all coming. I mean, the change is here, and the change is positive.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some individual stocks, John. Name some. What's your favourites? I know your favourites.
Well,
Cornish Metals is your favourite. We mention that every week.
I love Cornish Metals, but I love it partly because I started my career working in the South Crofty tin mine. But they announced in the week they've got a £7 million credit line from Vision Blue. Vision Blue are the fund backed by Mick Davis. Mick developed Xstrata from being a relatively small company to I forget how many billions it was, 5 billion, 6 billion, and sold it to, and it was sold to Glencore. These guys know how to build a company. They brought in a new CEO, Don Turvey, who's very dynamic, really switched on, knows a lot about mining. So Vision Blue are saying, yeah, we've got cash, we'll back you. The term on the loan is quite short, but the Vision Blue guys, well, firstly, they can't take over the underlying assets, and second, they won't want to either. So they'll almost certainly roll that over. It means the company's got sufficient funds to start talking to banks about the full project financing. And yeah, I expect that, well, they've got some more feasibility work to do first, and then hopefully they can put that financing package together sometime next year. So I'm very excited about Cornish Metals. It's restarting an old mine. It's not the hardest thing in the world. Yes, there's some modernization that needs to be done within the mine. None of it's rocket science. It's all pretty simple. Just needs the guys rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it, and they definitely are.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's not rocket science, because if you had rocket scientists in there trying to recreate a mine, they wouldn't do a good job, would they?
Well, I think if Elon Musk was running the mine, I don't think he'd do a bad job either.
Yeah, well, yeah, he seems to employ some very good people. He knows what he's doing, isn't he? Impressive rocket landing the other day. It's phenomenal. It's almost unbelievable that way that rocket landed and grabbed by the tower there. It is almost like he was running in reverse, the film. Thinking, did that really doesn't even look real? It doesn't look like aerodynamically it can fly like that and adjust like that. But anyway, okay, what's next? Oriole Resources.
Oriole Resources. They have a couple of gold projects in Cameroon, on the west side of Africa. I've been to Cameroon looking at various things. It's quite a nice country. I mean, when it rains hard. There's no doubt about that. But this is up towards the north. It's not too far north, which is good. And very promising gold projects. I think these will turn into, I want to say, multi-million ounce projects. maybe they get to 1 million ounces. It doesn't matter. I mean, it'll create an awful lot of value for Oriel. And Oriel this week consolidated some of their ownership, so they now own 90% of the Bibeni and MBE projects. So that's all good. One of our guys met with the Cameroonian Minister of Mines, who was here last week, shaking hands.
He was where? Where was he? He was in the UK.
He was here, yeah.
At your offices.
Banging the drum.
Oh, literally.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
Okay.
In terms of creating more interest for the country of Cameroon and for mining.
Okay.
So that's all positive.
Well, it's looking good there, the price stage. You know, from a low in November 23, there was at 0.07 pence, but now it's at 0.3 pence. So it's maybe they consolidate the shares a little bit, maybe. Who knows? But that 0.4 pence seems like a bit of resistance there. But also just, Cornish metals. That's it's trying to break that. So there's previous resistance here, but it's 7.7. If it gets about that 200-day moving average, it could be a good move. But you see there's a series of higher lows, which is quite good. We just need to see some of the higher highs now. Cool.
I should mention that we act as nomad and broker to both companies.
You should mention that. I think people who listen to this, probably watch this video, knows that, John, because
I know, but I have to say it, otherwise.
Anyway, we'll just assume everything John mentions, he owns stock in and he represents.
I still have to say it, Justin.
But that's the best way. Whenever you see a podcast, whenever I listen to someone talk about shares, I assume they have some involvement in it, and otherwise, because I trust that they do, because if you do have, an investment in a stock, you've done some research. If someone's just talking about a company they don't really stock in or have no relationship with, they're thinking, well, how do you know anything about this stock? What's in it for you? There's going to be something in it for someone to do some deep research on it, So anyway, there we are. So what's
all I can say, Justin, is I wish there was more in it, but there we are.
Yeah. What's next? You got
so I thought I'd mention SOLGOLD. We've been working with SOLGOLD for about 15 years now, and we have lived and breathed the Cascabel project ever since it was first incorporated into the company, and where Nick Mather, the CEO and the principal geologist, developed the scale of this project, because it's an enormous scale. I mean, it's definitely a world-class scale copper and gold project. And of course, the gold price is going up, so the value of all the gold in the underground resource is enormous. They announced they've been doing a bit of work on geotechnical drilling for the foundations, not just the foundations of the processing plant, but the foundations of the portals for the declines into the mine. The full financing hasn't been finalized yet, but they got a lot of money pledged, for selling offtake on the gold production. That doesn't mean that doesn't cap the value of the gold. It just means that there's effectively an upfront payment to them, and the gold, when they do sell their gold, they'll get the gold price minus a small amount. So it's still a very, very good project on the upside from a gold perspective. There is a lot of copper in there. I forget the exact numbers. And all I can say is the more the copper and gold prices go up, the more real this project becomes. So there's an awful lot of value to potentially be gained from this one.
Yeah. Well, do your own research and let us know how much copper's in there. There's a lot of copper in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you did research on this, John, you had more detail than that. But there's a lot of copper in there. Let's get it out.
Exactly.
That's all you need to know.
You're right.
There's a lot of copper in there, guys.
We do act as broker to this one, so just to say that again.
Now, this one is we had a bit of a debate on this one, VERSARIEN, right? I did very well on VERSARIEN many years ago when, of course, there's a different market now. This is when, of course, interest rates were super low for the longest period. I'm to sort of remind myself and other people, we went through a very extraordinary period in the market, from the great financial crash up to 2021, 22, when, interest rates were at their lowest for the longest period ever. And that's unusual. That means it was quite easy to, you must have been having it away with equity fundraisers, John, because it was easy to raise money, wasn't it? 'Cause nowhere else to put your money. And so you got a lot of these story stocks, companies that promised a lot but didn't deliver on financials, did very well. I bought this company at 13 pence, which is down here, and they were up to 180, but I sold them at 130. They 10 bagged pretty much. And since then, we've come down. Neil Ricketts, as CEO, is gone, and they are down at 0.035 pence. And I'm questioning the survival of this company, but you're saying you see upside here, yeah? Why?
I think this is a turnaround situation. I am a fan of graphene as a new material. I think it's a fantastic material. It's just been very difficult technically to incorporate graphene into new products, but these guys are making it work. So they've got, for example, they do graphene inks that's going into what's called active wear. It's going into training shoes. It's going into the stuff, gym wear that people buy, particularly in Latin America. They're also working on this these concrete modifiers and the 3D printing of concrete for housing projects. So look, the Neil Ricketts has gone. The guys in there, they've restructured. They brought in a restructuring expert. They sold off the bits and pieces that weren't really related to graphene. They're very, very focused now on the two product streams, the building and the graphene inks. And yeah, I think that they've got, the important thing is they've got a good pipeline. As you can see,
Yeah,
there,
but
the
do you know what,
pipeline is
John? Can I say,
4.7
but the
million
thing about
pounds.
pipelines is they can often get blocked, and in the commercial sense. And I've seen so many companies with really promising pipelines, huge pipelines, and they never materialize. And what's happened to that pipeline? They've been blocked.
I hear what you're saying, Justin. I think this is a realistic pipeline. 1.7 million pounds of commercial opportunities. I think that's a real number. And the grants, 3.1 million. Okay, that's a lot of grant funding, but there is a lot of grant funding for this sort of thing. Sadly it needs it. But I mean, even without the grant funding, I think this is a turnaround situation.
Well, so they've just raised 450K. In fact, who's taking a bit of this? Because I did see that. I did read this morning. Cantor Fitzgerald Europe. They now hold 6.5% of the company after that raise. But I'm just thinking, how long can they keep raising for? Because they are, what's the market cap now? They're about what? For 850, 140 million market cap.
Yeah. It's a tiny company, and there's no doubt about it. But that's the opportunity. £850, £1,000 market cap can go to 8 million on relatively small changes in my view.
Placing in July, they're gonna have to keep placing all the time. Then won't they just get people get annoyed
What I'm
by
trying
that?
to suggest to you is that I hope that they're now at a point where this starts to turn around.
Yeah, loss before tax of 1.7 million. And like I said, that's for 6 months. I hope they cut the costs a lot, because how long is that, well, they've just raised 450. How long
They
is that going to last?
Well, they've had costs relating to the assets that they've sold. Now those assets are on the way out, and they've got cash coming in. So from those assets, and that's an important part of the turnaround. It means you get rid of some of the stuff that was draining cash out of the business.
Okay. Net cash use operations. All right. So yeah. No, I understand. I understand the size. When you get nano caps like this, and this is, and even the, even, I just think there's so many costs involved. I mean, when you get a certain size though, of company, it's very hard to scale. Of course, if they do something, that's it lands a big deal, it can move very quickly. But when you're at sub 1 million, and your listing costs are what, 300,000? Everything. I don't know what they are, but even that, you think, is it viable to be listed anymore? I don't know. But you think there is?
I certainly think it is. Look, I think if the company hadn't been listed, it would have struggled with the
Yeah,
fundraise.
absolutely. Yeah, I know.
So
That's the whole point of
that is the
part
point
of
of the
it.
market. Yes.
Yeah, whole point of AIM. And that's what. Like, so coming back to in a full circle here, coming back to the government. These companies that have. I mean, graphene is, like I said, an advanced material with qualities, well, wonder qualities potentially. This is what should be forced. But I think to a certain extent, shouldn't there be a statute of limitations on companies where if they've been on the market for 10 years and they haven't generated any profit, or I mean, what would you give it? I mean, because there are companies that have been on AIM for like 15 years and they're still raising money. Thinking, hang on a sec, when do you get to the point of commerciality? There should be a limit there, shouldn't there?
Well, sometimes what you see, Justin, is that the initial idea didn't quite work out, but the companies get
Yeah.
recycled. So you might see, well, certainly see this in the mining sector, where an exploration company is looking for something in some far-flung part of the world. The project doesn't work out. That's just the geology of what's there. So you move on to something else, and what you find is that good management get there in the end. They will get to projects that really work, and I can give you a number of examples of it.
Yeah, but how long do you give it? I mean, let's say the first one doesn't work out. How long does it take to do this? How long does it take to find, an exploration site that has potential, explore it, find results in it, and then move on to the next? But how long do you give it? I mean, how long do you get it before, you say you've got to become commercial at some point in your lifetime. Otherwise it just gets ridiculous where they just carry on just raising money and there's no return, no real return. Because the share price can go up and down, but there's no real return on invested money, is there?
Look, in a bull market, these things tend to go up fantastically. But that's because there's lots of other investors piling in. There's lots more new money coming into the market. At the moment, we're in definitely a very depressed bear market environment. This is where the clever boys actually start investing. So I should have been non-gender specific there. But this is where the smart money is coming in and looking for opportunities, and we are seeing that now. These rich guys, I'm not going to name names because they don't like having their names mentioned, but we are seeing them fishing around in the market, looking for new opportunities, looking for ideas to develop, and they're definitely there swimming around.
Yeah. Yeah, these days you can't say clever boys or even clever girls, even clever people. You can't even say that because there's some people identify cats who are investors. So clever animals. Are we allowed to say that anymore? I don't know what we're allowed to say anymore. It's ridiculous.
Clever species.
Anyway, yeah. There's clever people. Oh, well, not people. You can't say people anymore. I say clever species out there investing money. You can't mention their names, John. Just give me their first names. Jeff, Colin, David, all those guys.
I might get cross. Louis, Jim, Alan,
Yeah. You just carry on with generic names. There we are. Jeff, Elon. Oh, Elon stands out actually.
Yeah, it does stand out a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Marvelous stuff. Anything else, John?
Well, look, I wanted to mention METALNRG.
Oh yeah,
small company, £8 million. They've been negotiating to buy a copper mine in Morocco for over a year now. They finally agreed that deal. It's a $32 million deal to buy an operating copper mine. The opportunity is to discover more copper. There's definitely more copper at depth, and hopefully they'll find more copper that's not such deep depth, and extend the life of this mine. And that's where the value will come in. Now, the reason I mention that, well, firstly, I think Morocco is a good place from a mining perspective. So I think there's value to be had out of that. We act for a company, we are nomad and broker to ATERIAN, who've got a lot of exploration in Morocco, and quite a lot of that's copper. Some very interesting copper grades have been found in chip samples at surface. So I wonder, now I'm thinking, well, MRG, Metals NRG are going to rename themselves to Atlas Metals. Are looking for more copper in the region, and I think ATERIAN might just be able to deliver some of that to them. So I'm hoping there's going to be a read across, as they say in the markets, and potential for ATERIAN to do well on the back of the Metal NRG deal.
Yeah, well, MNRG are doing well. Look at the chart. I mean, it's a nice uptrend, that is. From May, it's gone from 0.059 pence to now it's 10 bagged since May, pretty much. It's all right, isn't it, John?
It's not bad, but I mean,
Ethereum
is
on the other way.
This is a very big deal for them. You've got an £8 million company buying an asset for $32 million. And that asset produced $28 million of revenue last year. So I don't think that, buying on one-time sales doesn't seem like a bad price.
No.
There's much more that we need to learn about the asset before we make too many statements on that score.
Yeah. Just say there's a lot of copper in there. That's fine.
I actually don't know how much copper is left, so I need to go and have a look at that.
Yeah. Okay. In the world, you mean, or generally? In the project.
That too, Justin.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Do we know that? Does anyone know that? I mean, it's not about that. It's you'll always find, I suppose, mineralization, or you go to another planet, but it's just the quality of depth, isn't it, and all that stuff, and how much it costs to get it out, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, the USGS, United States Bureau of Geology, they do try and add up these numbers, but of course, I mean, the definition of these sorts of numbers is they always go out of date pretty damn fast. But look, it's got harder and harder to find new copper deposits over the years, and they are less and less frequent, those discoveries. So everybody's scraping around to find more copper.
Yeah,
and we know that the amount of copper being required for the electrification of the wind farms and the solar farms and electric vehicles. It far outweighs the amount of copper being mined at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it rose recently, of course, with the stimulus in China, and it's come back a bit now. It's at 9,670. Well, these are the futures dollars a ton of copper. Marvelous, but they're off their lows from previously. Marvelous, John. Thanks for that, and we'll speaky in a monthy, not a weeky. Doesn't rhyme anymore, though.
Thank you, Justin.